thank you for joining us for Energy Talks, part of the Uliza Usichezwe campaign run by the Kenya Civil Society Platform on Oil and Gas. Today, I'm honored to have with me online Ben Boachi. Ben Boachi is the Executive Director of the Africa Center for Energy Policy. Welcome, Ben.
Oh, pleased to be here. Thank you.
So, Ben, today I just wanted to catch up with you on, Ghana, as you know, Ghana has been an oil producer now for quite a few years. We've been, as Kenya, we look up to Ghana. We see Ghana as the closest country to us, a sort of a peer country. If you just update us a bit, where is Ghana in its oil and gas journey? Some of the challenges that it's experienced, for example, around gas. Just let us know what's the current update on Ghana.
Yeah, I mean, it's almost a decade. It's past a decade actually since we started producing oil. It was 10 years last year, so we're in the 11th year, and we now have three production fields. Producing approximately 200,000 barrels of oil per day. So it's become a major contributor to the economy of Ghana. 2020, we were expecting around $1.5 billion of revenue from oil. But as you know, COVID struck and oil price collapsed. So we lost about $800 million of that projection to COVID. So the cyclicality of the industry and the fact that predicting oil revenues could be very challenging hits Ghana badly. And I think it's the second time we've had that. In 2014, we had a similar situation where we're expecting about $1 billion and we only got 300 million. So these are lessons that, hopefully we should be able to accommodate in how we plan with oil revenues. Fortunately, we've seen price.
Sorry, take you back a bit. I mean, I remember the challenge before was the projections were actually, because the projections weren't realized, and I believe Ghana had borrowed against those future revenues.
Yes. So, I mean, we had problems with projection, but I think those problems they have been eliminated to a large extent. But I think what we had last year was just the price effect, where you're projecting to sell around $62, and then it drops to as low as $20 at some point. And even for some countries was almost negative, for a price for a barrel of oil. So that was what really impacted us in 2021. The challenge really is that we have mechanisms in law for us to be able to smoothen these kind of fluctuations and cyclicality in oil price. Our petroleum revenue management law requires that we put aside a portion of the revenues to be able to account for these cyclicalities. The problem is that we haven't been able to use the stabilization fund to do that because we have capped it so low that it's ineffective if you have such a major shock on the international market. For example, when we had oil price decline to $20, the outstanding balance of our stabilization fund was $300 million. And if you have a shortfall of about $800 million, you're not able to smoothen that effect. So over time, we've not been able to build the needed buffer. We would have had about $1.6 billion in that account if we decided to let the money stay in there. But the Minister of Finance caps the stabilization fund, which is in compliance with the law though, and uses it for debt servicing over the years. So that has really been part of the effect of the COVID on Ghana. And maybe beyond the COVID, we need to really plan how we can deliberately anticipate some of the cyclicality issues in oil and gas and be able to smoothen the budget. Because when you drop revenues of that magnitude, it affects your planning, it affects your program activity. For example, if you want to build schools, you want to build hospitals, and you don't have $800 million to to pump into those investments, you can't deliver those projects on time. That is why you always have to have that buffer to be able to smoothen your budget so that your plans can stay smooth and not distorted. Because distortion also creates its own problems and challenges, cost overruns, delays in project deliveries, and all of that.
So in Kenya, we have an interesting mechanism where we have what we call a petroleum development levy, and this is downstream. So we actually the aim is to smoothen the downstream prices, because so that to cushion from shocks, for example, in the when the global price goes up. I don't know whether you're aware, but Kenya has price control mechanism. So the price is actually set at the downstream. So, what parallels can you draw with that, with the Ghanaian experience of having a stabilization mechanism where the shock is too high for it to be cushioned?
No, I think we have the similar mechanism also downstream. We have the price stabilization levy,
Yeah.
which is supposed to smoothing the price at the pump when you see prices distort so significantly. But the challenge is that those mechanisms don't work. Nobody is patient to save money until the difficult challenges in our context. I don't know whether the angels are working in Kenya, but in Ghana, it's been a big challenge to get government saving money to be able to smoothen the price effect. We have price moving from $20, in July last year to now almost $66.
Yeah.
Nobody's smoothing anything, even though we've been paying the price stabilization levy
Yeah.
for all these years. So the levies are always there to create more money for political expediency and other expenditures rather than really addressing the price effect. Uh, in Ghana, largely, I mean, petroleum price is deregulated. So government takes its taxes and the industry sets the price based on the taxes and the actual value, market value of the product. So that is what happens as far as downstream is concerned. We used to have a highly regulated downstream space where government kept, accumulating debt. But since 2015, we decided that we should deregulate the sector so that government doesn't have to intervene and then create debts that it has to pay. So since 2015, we haven't had that problem. It is, it's deregulated beyond the taxes that are paid and also the collection of price stabilization levy that is supposed to come in when the market is really pinching us. But it doesn't happen. Nobody gives you any money. They don't stabilize the.
Yeah, I wanted to bring it back to the conversation. I mean, obviously, you said COVID is one of the greatest challenges now. And I wanted you to also say a bit more about the Africa Center for Energy Policy in terms of the work that you do in terms of intervening. And as you're telling us a bit more about that as well, if you could tell us the impact on your operations of COVID-19 in terms of pushing for transparency and accountability.
Yeah, I mean, the impact of COVID on our work has been at different levels. I mean, first of all, we even try to understand the impact on society in general in the African continent. I mean, we had Kenya participating, we had other countries also participating to understand how, COVID has impacted businesses, government decisions, service companies. And you will see some similarities when it comes to jobs. I mean, for government, they are not able to retrench, they are not able to let people go home. But if you're not letting people go home, then you have to raise money from somewhere to be able to pay the salaries of the national oil companies and the companies that are aligned to government. So those are some of the challenges. But for the business, entities, they had to let people go home. So people lost jobs in the industry. And also I mentioned the revenue challenges that has faced Ghana and many other African countries. I mean, Nigeria had to cut its budget billions because of the impact of COVID. And on civil society, I mean, our own level, we have lost over $300,000 in grants and programmed, activities. But because some of the donors had to shift focus and focus on service delivery and interventions that had to deal with, the pandemic directly. So those of us who were doing advocacy on oil and gas were really impacted in that space. So the resilience of civil society has been tested significantly, not just us. Many civil society organizations have, been struggling in these COVID times, especially if you are not doing direct service delivery that other donors were interested in the COVID times. But we are fortunate to be surviving because other donors provided some flexibility for us to be able to stay afloat around this.
And I think, I mean, of course, one of the impacts of that is in terms of pushing back on decision. Are you seeing some decisions being pushed, especially during this time when there's less scrutiny? Because obviously, like you said, I mean, civil societies advocacy has reduced during this time. So are you seeing an impact, for example, around transparency on that?
No, I mean, it's a major impact, not just for oil and gas, but general governance.
Yeah.
But this is a fine opportunity for procurement. Okay, so everything is on the high-speed rail of emergency procurement, and you can't track, what government does. And oh, it was COVID. It was COVID. Everything was COVID, and they are doing the procurement. But the reality is that 2-3 years down the line, some of these loans that are being procured and going through these shady procurements are going to mature, and the countries are going to start paying for these debts that were procured. So for Africa and for the poorer countries, the effect of COVID will be extended beyond the disease itself into era where we have to pay the debt that we accumulated in the name of COVID and essentially abuse them. We got the money and we abused the money. So those are the problems that Africa will continue to grapple with beyond the next year or two, where we are fortunately going to have vaccines in to address the disease itself, but its effect. I mean, for example, the IMF was giving money to many countries. Ghana got $1 billion. It's gone. But in 5 years' time, we have to pay for that money.
Yeah.
Right. So
Kenya is also undergoing a similar IMF program at the moment. I think they've just given us about 2 billion as well. Yeah.
Okay. So, and many countries are in similar situation. The World Bank is also giving money. At the same time, they are going to the market, the Eurobonds, to go and raise debt and spend. But all these things are going to mature in the medium term, and the countries will have to find a way to pay. So we can see in the medium term taxes going up to be able to raise revenue to offset some of these accumulated debt over the years. So immediately what we have to do, I mean, for civil society in particular, at least for those who are surviving, as I mentioned, some are really struggling to even keep up with the work. So those of us who are surviving, we should pay attention to how government is spending money in this COVID era, to see how we can be judicious and target economic drivers, really lift people from the impact of the COVID, and then sustain economic growth that will be able to pay for some of the debts that have been procured. If we allow everything to go into consumption and we can't account for the money, we will have to pay it anyway. And government has nothing beyond what the citizens give. So that is what we have to pay attention to be able to monitor expenditure, even though it is difficult, and they're using COVID as the excuse not to be accountable.
So what do you, I mean, in terms of just summary, just for the last question, I wanted to ask you, how do you see the oil and gas sector post-pandemic looking like? I mean, of course, now there's issues, of course, around energy transition being a huge conversation at the moment. What does a post-pandemic future of oil and gas and energy look like?
Yeah, I mean, it's a very interesting time. I mean, a lot of projects have been suspended because of the COVID. Force majeures have been declared in many countries. Ghana has had its own share. We're supposed to have had one company start developing this field so that by 2023 we'll have a fourth oil production field coming on. It's not going to happen. They haven't even, revoked their force majeure. So, and many other projects across the region had similar situation. At the same time, renewable technology is advancing so rapidly. The cost of solar panels keep dropping and is becoming much more attractive. So the future of oil is much more uncertain than we had yesterday. So we need to really see how aggressively countries that have discovered oil and have started developing their fields can come on stream quickly and be able to make some money and invest
And also,
in renewable technologies.
and I wanted to put it to you. I mean, one of the challenges obviously is energy access. And so, I mean, but I'm not seeing enough of civil society work, for example, around power purchasing agreements, which is because we feel, I mean, the two issues around energy access is accessibility and affordability. So, I mean, should civil society ramp up work, for example, around power purchasing agreements? I know there's a bit of work now around take or pay or take and pay. I think AFDB has been working on it. But I mean, should civil society play a bigger role in terms of pushing for energy access?
I mean, absolutely. I mean, now we even have opportunity with renewable technology to push access much more rapidly to the underserved and communities that don't have electricity. For governments and for politicians in general, procurement is a cheaper option for them. So once they have the opportunity to procure, through conventional energy, which gives them much more money immediately, they will want to focus on that. And that's why we have this significant number of take or pay agreements dotted across the region. And, in Ghana, we are paying, the last count, we're paying about $40 million a month for power we don't need.
Yeah.
Politicians have signed it up for it and they are here. There is no infrastructure to transmit the power and distribute for those who don't even have the power. We don't have businesses that can, uptake that volume of power that has been signed up to. So that becomes a burden on the economy that, takes away investment in social infrastructure and economic development of the country in general. So those are challenges that we are faced, and I agree with you. I mean, civil society will have to up our game to monitor procurement in the resource sector and also in the power sector to ensure that we can streamline those things. But also, again, institutional development. A lot of these agencies are owned by the state and they are so inefficient.
Yeah.
We can continue to run institutions like that. If government is not willing to allow the institutions to be independent and accountable, then they must as well sell it and allow the private sector to come in and compete. Once you inject competition into the distribution and transmission of electricity and all of it, that helps to reduce the inefficiencies in the sector, rather than government always wanting to be the procurement entity, procuring everything and remaining unaccountable.
So I think what you mentioned also, I guess it's bigger than in country. It's a Pan-African problem. So I'll ask you a bit of a biased question. So do you feel the Africa Oil Governance Summit, needs to basically expand to look more broadly at these issues going forward? Because I mean, it's clearly the Ghana experience where you're saying we are paying more than we produce is not a Ghana problem. It's a Kenya challenge as well that we're having now. Where we have renewable in the mix and the old thermal producers. So yeah, I mean, in closing, I mean, would you say how do you see the Africa Oil Governance Summit coming into that space to work on that issue? Yeah.
No, I think you're right. We already started. I mean, last year we looked at energy transition and looking at, renewable technology and some of the technologies that are replacing oil essentially, and how African countries can deal with that. It's not only, a simple issue about Africa losing out on oil is oil production, but also what opportunities can we tap into with our current oil production and also the energy transition in itself? Because beyond oil, a lot of the inputs into this energy transition are also available in our continent. The minerals that are required for battery technologies and solar panels, they are here. So how do we also look at the economics of the transition to position ourselves rather than being so worried that we are oil producers? You know, so those are conversations we are interested in deepening going forward to encourage countries to look at the economics of the transition so that you don't wait, even if you don't believe it in it. Panels are being sold. Is somebody not making money?
Yes.
Batteries are being sold. Is somebody not making money? So let us not be worried, but look at the economics and see what opportunities we can also tap into, so that if it happens, we are not just the market, but we also sell to the market.
Yeah, I mean, thanks, Ben. I think that's a good note to end on, sort of that this idea that as the transition happens, we need to go along with it, and not just sort of push back and say no, we just wait. We need to produce our oil, but also to say look at these are the economic opportunities, but also in terms of increasing energy access for our citizens. So thanks a lot for joining us today on Energy Talks, and we look forward to continuing this conversation.
You're welcome. All right. Have a great day.